Good morning, everyone. Welcome to yet another installment of SD52 Coffee and Conversation. I forgot to look this morning, but I think this is like episode 87. Season 1, episode 87, or season 8, episode 7, whichever you would like for all of you streaming fans. I'm delighted to have Minnesota Young DFL this morning. I have only recently gotten to know Kati, and I don't think I have yet met until now her colleagues. It's been, I did try to reach out to Minnesota Young DFL maybe 10 years ago. And I know that you exist or existed then as well. Didn't get much feedback. But Kati, your comments to me when we had coffee were that you're going to be real active going forward. And I'm delighted to see that, hear that, and really want to know exactly what that means. So I know that you guys want to do some introductions, and I was going to ask you to do that anyway. So why don't you introduce yourselves and the other members of the group who are here? And then, big surprise, I've got a lot of questions.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Ron, for hosting, and my fellow Senate 52ers. My name is Kati Gomez. My pronouns are open, but if you're going to pick one, I prefer they, them. And I am calling from Burnsville Precinct 1. And I am the state advocacy director for the Minnesota Young DFL, and I will pass it over to our esteemed president, Kavya.
Hello, everyone. It is so nice being with you all this morning. A huge thank you for having us. My name is Kavya Nair. I am the current president of MYDFL, and I'm just really excited to be here with you all and let you know about what MYDFL is up to.
And Sam is also with us.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Sam Weston. I'm the vice president for Greater Minnesota for MYDFL. I live in Duluth and currently actually calling in from my parents' place in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very exciting to get to talk to you all and dispel some myths about Greater Minnesota.
Yeah.
As I said before we started, I am very eager to hear that from a Minnesota youth point of view. I've certainly heard enough of it from us old folks, but I want to hear it from your point of view. But before we get there, let's start at the 30,000 foot. What's the mission of MYDFL? How would you define that? Well, I don't know which one of you wants to take the lead on answering these questions. Kavya, why don't you start with that one?
Yeah,
you're the lead.
Okay, so we are the official youth caucus of the Minnesota DFL party. And overall, the mission is to engage young Democrats to participate in Minnesota and national politics. We identify and advance progressive issues, and we aim to develop and support young candidates while sustaining community partnerships. And I think overall, it's just how do we become that pipeline for young people to get their foot into the party and then stay with it. So yeah.
What is that pipeline? How does it work? If I'm out there and I'm, say, I don't know, a St. Olaf College student, how do I connect up with you, and what kinds of things can I anticipate doing with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are active on both social media and we have a website, and then we do meet monthly. And then that would be your chance to connect with other young DFLers and see what's happening around the state pertaining to youth issues specifically. And then as for pipeline, it's just a way to build your network and stay connected with people that are aware of other opportunities so that we have a strong force, and then they go on to do amazing things in politics, and they got our start with us.
Do you have that regular monthly meeting online, or do you do it in person sometimes?
Yes, we do. So it's on Zoom. We just turned over our new leadership board. It's very exciting. We have almost all our positions are new people. And so we are still getting into planning events, which is something we would love to do, partnering with our endorsed candidates. But as of now, we hold our monthly meeting on Zoom. Yes.
Okay, tell
Yes.
me.
And
Kati?
yeah, I was just going to say, we have an almost entirely new slate of leadership. When you said you reached out almost 10 years ago and hadn't heard a response, I kind of was chuckling because none of us were there.
Right. I'm not blaming you. I'm not
Many
blaming
of
you.
us weren't there, although maybe Sam. But I love Sam as I consider him our veteran young DFLer. And I would love if you have any thoughts or observations on how you've seen my DFL grow from from our last leadership to this one, or even the focus, because I know we had some connections with the national office, and I would love to talk more about that. But as we're getting started, I'd also love to level set and tell you all, although you may know, that my DFL, it was founded in 1947. So we are, if not the oldest, one of the oldest community caucuses here. And so I just really want to highlight how young people have been on the forefront of organizing, not just around issues and not just around candidates, but as a way to protect ourselves and to advance, what we believe, I always say, is the righteous fight, or whatever that mission is for you folks. But Sam, I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts about how things have transitioned or what you've observed just these last couple of years in your role here.
Yeah, so to give a little timeline, I didn't really first get involved at all with MYDFL until 2017. So I also was not there 10 years ago, but I wasn't really committed to MYDFL until about 2021, 2022, when things were a lot more subdued, a lot more quieter in terms of operations, and we were trying to revitalize things. That was really the start of the big push that led us to where we are now. It's been claiming veteran status is not something I would choose for myself, but I will happily take that mantle. Really, Quentin is the one who's probably the most involved, and he's still an officer with MYDFL, and also now he is the party's outreach and inclusion officer. So great connection to have there for everyone in the state.
I think I saw him as President Emeritus on the website.
President Emeritus, because he previously, before Kavya, was the president of MYDFL. He is now serving as our national representative, and so he will represent us at the Young Democrats of America, as well as other national organizations that are focused on youth issues.
So you have your meetings monthly online. What's a typical agenda look like? What do you talk about?
Yeah, so typically within a meeting, we will begin with our officer reports. So we have a pretty big leadership slate. I think we have about 12 people on our leadership, which also includes the College Democrats of Minnesota and the High School Democrats of Minnesota, which high school is new this year. So we go down.
That was the group I was trying to reach 10 years ago or thereabouts. As I recall, my recollection is very vague. I think it was oriented toward a candidate. I don't remember who that was. For all I know, it was Jim Carlson. But it was the high school kids that I was trying to reach back then. So anyway, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, all good. Yeah. So actually, high school Dems has been something that hasn't been super active. And then they recently did last year. And luckily we were able to have them fall under us. So we're able to give them resources and financial support, and also be a strong parent organization over them. So we're really excited to have them this year. And they've been expanding well past the Twin Cities, which is really exciting. Essentially in a meeting, we will go through our officer reports, and each officer, the way it's structured, is kind of taking on their own little project. So it's basically a check-in on how those projects are going, and they're kind of tailored to interest. And then we will typically just dive into any new business that's on the agenda.
Okay. Go deeper in those things. So what are some of the pet projects? What are some of the new business items? I understand that from a 30,000-foot level, but I want to know more specifics.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So just for example, we have a student that goes to American out in DC, and his little pet project is how do we keep students that are out of state engaged in Minnesota politics. So we have, I think, him and one other person on our board that qualify under that. And so that's their project. And then actually, rather than me. If Sam or Kati, if you want to explain yours, you can go ahead, so I don't explain for you.
Yeah, I've for the past year or so, I've been hearing from a lot of rural DFL units, where there's they tend to skew older, and are very frustrated. Like, how do we get young people involved? And so I've actually been developing, sort of in the background, a field manual that rural units can use to revitalize their units, so that they can be more appealing to young people, and kind of drive, basically to help retain young people, and keep them involved in the party long term.
Okay, and what do you want those young people up north to do? Do you want them to door knock and phone bank? Do you want them to get out to register voters? Do you want them to just sign up and say, I'm a Democrat? What do you want them to do?
I mean, yeah, door knocking and phone banking is always great. That's the bread and butter of our party and how things work. But it can't just be give. It also has to be, a little bit of receiving. And so, young people want to, generally want to feel supported, want to feel like they have agency in things, and, be able to put ideas out into the world and actually see progress on those ideas, and things actually happening from that. And so it's the same kind of ethos that we have within MYDFL of we're doing individual projects. If you give a project to a young person, they will be gung-ho about that, as long as it's something that they're actually genuinely interested in.
Okay, well, give me some examples. I'm trying to drill down, and somebody picks up the phone and says, Sam, will you do this for me? What is this?
Yeah.
Man, that's a great question. I might need a little bit of time to think.
I was going to say, as the advocacy director, I can speak more to some of those issues or some of those things that we're talking about. As a MyDFL caucus, we haven't gone through in many years. With this, I'm excited to go through a process to identify really what are some clear goals or advocacy goals that MyDFL might have. I know that there are a lot that I am passionate about, as well as ones that I know I am well aligned with Kavya and Sam and other folks in MyDFL, but I learned early on in my career that there is nothing better than good governance. And so really identifying what are those processes that we can use to come to, if not a consensus, an agreement, because I think that is so important, and then to respect those agreements going forward. So hopefully something that we can teach young people or share with young people as they're getting involved with Robert and his rules, how to navigate all of these different processes. And so what specific acts that I know that I have of other folks when we're organizing, but that many of us have, I mean, yes, it's around candidates. I think where we have a lot of power, it's in these local races. It's in our time that we're able to give. Every time I go to a fundraiser, I try to smile extra big, because that's what I know I can give a candidate, not so much open my wallet, but I can smile or knock a door, or I can do things like that. And so that's part of it. But then also, when we're talking about holding caucuses, and we know that that takes time, and teaching young people how to be involved. And then knowing that if we instill, and I learned this from Kyle Chen, our high school Democrats co-president or co-chair, if you are instilling these practices early on and you're teaching them good governance and to respect the process and how to have these negotiations or how to disagree without being disagreeable, that they're more likely to continue following those practices later on, and to share that with those around them. And so I think, and one thing I've been very passionate about is really localizing the work. And lots of times, we hear about democracy. Democracy's on the ballot. Democracy is under attack. And what does that really mean to young people who have grown up? And I'll call it out. Here in America, we live in an incredibly privileged world. And one thing that young people we are privileged with is to grow up here, but also to have access to information from around the globe. And I can speak personally, and I know that there might be others on the call or others in my DFL who are children of immigrants or who have come from other places in the world where these privileges aren't just guaranteed. And so when I'm hearing about, when I hear about, okay, young people, it's time to defend democracy, it's really, if we're the ones that we can trust, how are we ourselves putting ourselves in the place where we can stand in the gap and help interpret things for our communities? So that was my tangent, but just some of those things of what we're asking for people is really more of those specific things, and not just like a grand idea of, well, we need you to defend democracy. And I was like, I'm 17. What do you mean I need to defend democracy? It's like, no, I need you to go knock a door, or I need you to do this a specific ask.
Bouncing off of that.
Yeah, I was like, what would you add?
Yeah, bouncing off of that, to get back to your initial question, Ron, I generally young people really latch onto, or from what I've gathered, young people latch onto, having a short-term thing that they can see real, reasonable, tangible change. So, for example, when Senate District 8, is putting together its fundraiser right now, its big fundraiser dinner, and one of the tasks that just happens to be needed every year is to put together the program, the design for the program. I ended up taking that on and have been just devouring it. And it's small projects like that are a really great way to get a young person involved and have and they know that they have agency in the decisions, whether it's putting together a program or getting your local unit involved in in a tabling event, or any variety of other like small short-term projects that still have a lot of impact. These are things that really help young people feel emboldened within the party and that there's agency, and set a really good vibe for the long term, to where they're going to be like, yeah, I want to stick around. I want to, feel more empowered. And as they get more practice, then it's a lot easier to take on bigger and bigger tasks, or bigger and bigger aspects of being in the party.
Let's take on a particular task. Next Saturday, big rally day. I think you've heard of it. What is my DFL doing for No Kings?
I have a response. Nothing. As far as I'm aware, as a MYDFL, we are not doing anything, and unless that's changed. I know that many of us will be involved in our own respective Senate districts and involved locally, but I can speak personally, and I am only speaking personally, is I think there is a big difference between a protest and a parade. And speaking what I said before about, the privileges that we have here, freedom of speech is a huge privilege, and the ability to walk down the street and to occupy space is a huge privilege. And young people recognize that, and young people are very well educated. They're way smarter than I am. Every time I'm in space, I learn how to be a better Kati, more politically correct, use more inclusive language. So I'm not, above these same, criticisms. But when we are working with institutions that have been known to inflict harm on communities that many of us come from, and I'll call it, as the police department, like that to me screams more parade than a protest. And when I think about what can we do as young people to actually enact change, to kind of push the lever, or, push people to do more action, I think it's more important to localize what we're talking about. So we can try and defend democracy on a global scale, but if all we do is show up on a corner and we don't engage in politics on a and we're not involved in civic engagement, then it's just a parade. And I think it's so important for us to localize justice work or localize social justice. And so it's not always talking about national politics as they are so scary or they are so bad or the other side of the aisle is so bad. What young people want to hear is, what are you going to do around housing here in the Twin Cities? If we are really want to defend democracy, then what are you going to do to make sure that communities aren't swept up in the middle of the night? And how are you going to make sure that we are protected? And to ask a young person of color, myself, to go out and protest on behalf of No Kings, I think that isn't necessarily that's not where my power is best used. And so that was me speaking personally, but that's what, yeah. But Sam, what are you going to say?
Yeah, bouncing off of that, just everything Tati said is, totally in line with everything I've heard from young people across the board. But just to give a little context for why this attitude is so pervasive among young people, it's because, we are, at best, like a third of a century old. Our lived experience shows that when people protest, nothing happens. And so a lot of us are more interested in seeing tangible change. Protest, unfortunately, is not one of the things that we have seen work. I know that historically it has worked, but that's not something that's true to our lived experience. And so it's really important to keep in mind that, these are things where, we really like, generally, young people across the board like to see actual change, that we can actually see with our eyes. And when that doesn't happen, or when it takes too long for that to happen, we get burned out. We move on to other things, and our political allegiances shift. This is why it has been such an uphill battle to convince people that the DFL is worth our time. It is still a very necessary conversation, but this is part of why it is so hard, because we have not seen the DFL really do much for us, even though the DFL has historically done a lot.
Okay, well, that begs the question. What would you like to see the DFL do for you?
Basic bread and butter issues. I mean, I would love to see more to be done toward, affordable housing, universal healthcare, basic, increases to our wages. These are things that are universal across history, but at the same time, we're not seeing that much anymore, and we need to see more of it soon.
Okay, so
Ron, my hand is up. Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not very good with Google Meet. So of course, T, please go ahead.
No problem. And thank you, Ron, for getting the Young DFL caucus here. I'm so excited that you guys are here this morning. And I'm excited just by this recent comment about the No Kings, and was like, okay. So my question centers around, so you have 14 to 36, right? And that's considered the Young DFL. And so when you are deciding on what issues are priority or where we're going to show up, do you take a straw poll? Have you determined, is there an age group that's have differences of opinion of what we should and should not do? Because I have been in spaces with young people. I'm having 3 adult sons myself, and their opinions and thoughts differ based on the 25-year-old, the 30-year-old, and then say a niece that's 16. And so how do you determine that we as a collective group say no to No Kings, but then this 14 to 20-year-olds are saying, well, maybe?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I can take that one. So I think it boils down to, we won't know what we're not told about. So our board is pretty diverse in age. We have people that are close to both tail ends of that spectrum of the 14 to 36, which I think is really amazing and was intentional so that we are hearing, perspectives from different age ranges within that one age range. And then on top of that, we have college, as I mentioned, we have college Dems and high school Dems, which falls under us. So then we even get more focused in on what that age range cares about. And I think there are definitely distinct differences. Like what I've been hearing from high school Dems is, they're mostly juniors and seniors, and they're worried about the rising cost of tuition. Some of them are already ruling out like a med school, grad school situation for themselves, even before graduating high school now. So it definitely has been interesting to see. And then on the other end, we have young families, and their issues are going to look different than what the high schoolers have to say. So I think it boils down to our board in itself is very diverse in experience and age. And so that's been really helpful to fuel what MYDFL focuses on.
Thank you.
Kathy,
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, T. Did you finish?
No, I was thinking for the comment. Thank you so much.
Oh,
And the
okay.
response.
All right. Kati, your role is advocacy. I'm going to guess that you are the leader of advocating on behalf of young people for issues, for solutions to issues, and you're going to advocate towards people who have the power and authority to do something about those issues. In one word, it's lobbying, but I don't know that necessarily encompasses what you want to do. But we have the privilege of having our Senator Jim Carlson here. If you want to have him do something, what would it be, and how would you reach out to Jim and ask him to do that thing for you?
Hey, I'm here too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bianca. I knew you were there. Forgive me. I knew you were there. And Liz is not on with us. And do we have any other currently elected people? I know we have candidates on the call with us. Okay, Bianca, you get to answer the question too. Jim, why don't you go first? And you're muted.
Can you repeat the
there you go.
the
All right.
question?
So what can Kati do as the advocate on behalf of young DFLers, presumably, but young people generally? What can she do to advocate on behalf of an issue that is of interest and concern to young DFL?
Okay, and you're speaking of an issue that is not necessarily political, it's policy, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Kati, yes.
Pardon me?
I'm asking Kati, yes. Would that make sense?
That would
policy
make
issue.
sense. I think, yeah. Senator Carlson, I think if we were to reach out, we would have a specific ask, either for you to take a policy action or for you to use your pulpit to advocate for something.
Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you about one particular issue that did come from Egan High School, and that sometimes these things take a while too. And the more it is formatted for action, probably the more attractive it is for us to pick up on. And the big thing that I had was from Egan High School, from young, let's see, what was it called? I don't know if it was called Young DFL at the time, but it was the initiative of being able to pre-register to vote for 16-year-olds. And that's where the person had written the bill up so that it could be read, and then brought it to me and brought it to a person in the House. And even then, it took a while for it to be, let's say, understood and accepted. And that's been passed now. So that was a policy that actually got passed, and it was because he worked hard, and he met all sorts of people and got them interested in the issue, and actually worked even harder on the people that may have had some kind of reluctance to it. And I picked it up. I introduced the bill, which, that's what you do, is you introduce a bill so that people can take a look at it. There are a lot of people across the state that look at bill introductions every day. So that's what puts it out right in front of people when it's a bill that's and then it has sponsors, and we try to get as many sponsors as we can, and as many people that have done work in that particular area, for instance, in elections. And we also try to find out if there's any glitches in there, and that makes it more, let's say, it greases the skids for getting it heard in the Senate or the House. And that's really how it gets done, how those things get done. But then there's other things, for instance, like, let's say, contributions that there are groups that work on campaign finance that are across the country. And there are ideas that they would like to promote. And so if we have a young DFLer that wants to help promote that, that's something that, when it gets to the point of being acceptable to a greater number of people and acceptable to a senator enough to sponsor it and a committee to hear it, then it gets, and that takes work. That it gets a lot more legs than something that might just be published nationally, and we need to figure out whether we're going to pick it up or not.
Okay.
So those are the kinds of things, and I'm trying to think now if there is anything that's of the most recent issues that are top priority for the legislature. And of course, one of them is our position on firearms and on what kind of firearms can be dealt with. And is it something that we just want to be hard-nosed and say, ban them? Or do we want to have something that might have a connection where we can negotiate with the people that don't want the ultimate of banning? And let's say now in Eagan, we have a gun range. There's a gun range that's over off of Highway 3. And usually I don't know if they're active today, but I can usually hear them. And this gun range has been there for many years. And you have to respect the fact that they were there before the houses were built around it. But some of the folks do want to eliminate the gun range. And there's I think we did have no restriction on what could be fired there, but then there were people that were having let's say some kind of overshot that would come into their neighborhood. And those are rifled slugs. And so what we did was we banned those. So you could use a shotgun. That shot does not go very far. So we had a compromise there on something that is an emotional issue with having guns fired nearby. But we did work on them. The next thing was the noise. And I actually carried a bill to help reduce the noise by using silencers on the gun range. So that made it a little bit more usable. Now we have to say that we don't want the slugs or I guess you could say slugs to go outside of the gun range. And so that was our compromise. Was, hey, they were here first. Hey, yes, noise is a problem, and yes, silencers do help reduce the noise.
So Jim, if I can interrupt you here, you're going down a wonderful rabbit hole on gun issues. But back to the question of how MYDFL, the young people, can get involved in those issues. I'm hearing you say basically two things so far. One is write a bill, get it and get it sponsored. Perhaps more likely is get involved in committees that address those specific issues, be they gun safety issues, be they housing and immigration, as Kati has said, or any others. And find the group that is discussing that, be it an actual committee, legislative committee, or an advisory commission. I know those things exist at the city level. I don't know if they exist at the state level. Those are two things that MYDFL could do in direct action with legislature. Is that
Yeah.
is that fair? Okay.
That's true. I'm not sure if I can diagnose whether there are local groups that get involved in that, but there are nonprofits
Yeah.
that get
Well,
involved.
the city of Eagan has advisory commissions that citizens can get involved in. I know several people who do that. I've thought about doing it myself from time to time. But I want to give Bianca a chance to weigh in on this question. And the question, Bianca, is what roles can MYDFL play to advance the issues that are of interest to them? We've got two ideas that we were kicking around with Jim. What else can they do?
So a lot of kind of what you said. Kati, it looked like you really wanted to jump in there, but I'll try to go fast. I have so much to say, but I'm going to narrow it to just this. So get involved. I mean, I was on the Egan TV with the high school kids and said, don't wait till you're 40 to get involved. So whatever that looks like for you as a student, as a young person, what you have time and capacity for, it can be door knocking. I mean, Kyle Chen is one of my best door knockers. We have a great time. You know, it can be joining a committee. So when the school board so when we had openings to fill my position, we had college students apply, which was great because we haven't had that before. When we have openings in advisory committees for the school district, we're getting younger people to engage and apply for those openings. I think you touched on it, Ron, where, you know, build a relationship with your legislators, because when you want to pass legislation, it helps to know, you know, who sits on ed finance or who is on elections, what are their interests, who are the advocates in that space, whether it's people in your community or bigger organizations, say like Isaiah or Unidos or, you know, whatever, who's on that journey with you. I think something that I would say for young people, I mean, people at any stage of this process, is understanding who has jurisdiction and what the possible paths forward look like. So for example, I know Kyle and them are trying to lower the voting age for local elections. But to do that, you need a constitutional amendment. And there's like 6 things that are on the list to try to get a constitutional amendment for. And so, you know, you kind of, do you move ahead of the ERA, right? Because Betty Folliard is, I mean, she's in the queue waiting. What does that look like? And then sometimes what you think might be the right answer. So maybe, and we saw this last year around opioids, was we need a law that says you have to train kids in school about opioid overdose. And in reality, all we really needed to do was tweak a little bit of language in the health standards that passed the year before. So when they came and chatted, they had a very like, this is exactly what we want to happen, but we talked about other paths forward. And by tweaking that language, it passed. They got to move that forward much faster than if you went down this road. So to kind of be flexible, understand who your partners are, getting to know your legislators. I think the committee is, what jurisdiction do they have?
Yeah, I think these are all really great avenues to enact legislative change. And one thing I've been learning, you know, in my time with young people, is so many of us are coming to the table with theories of change of our own. And so I've always been incredibly impressed. Well, you know, we all do community organizing, folks, whether or not we want to admit it. You know, we're here today. Look at us. But so many of us have been involved in the campaign work, and especially now that we're now like more involved in our Senate districts and things like that. You know, using this is just one piece of our organizing journey that many of us are on. And so one of the advantages that I think that the caucuses have that MYDFL might not have is really that longevity, or that ability to hold on to history. If you're, you know, if our people are 14 to 36, We're not able to sit around for a decade, especially while we're going through high school, college, trying to figure out my first job. I had to enroll in health insurance. Oh my gosh. And to then, as a policy wonk, and when you said, oh, there's people who read the introductions, I'm that person. I'll scroll through all 1,500 if I gotta, and I'll find the ones that I care about. And so I agree that it is about sharing this out and making it normal for us to participate. I keep saying, the number of hearings that go by that you don't hear a young person testify, or there is no voice, no letter that's submitted. I'm just super cautious about laws and can we lobby? I don't think we can lobby, in that sense of the word, but as individuals, I know we can still do that. And so I think where MYDFL can really take that additional step, hopefully in partnership with you, Senator and Representative, but is to make those processes so clear in a way that I think is evergreen, or a way that may have it so these processes are still clear even after we leave. So it's not just new people always being onboarded, and we are all trying to do the best thing, for ourselves or for our people. And then also the other part is MYDFL, it has been and will continue to be a changing thing. The same person early on who told me to focus on good governance, Bianca, you said that flexibility, it was similar to that thing, is to be able to change to adapt to what you need at the time. And so especially when things are coming down from the federal, things where you have to be responsive, you can't always just be advocating for the universal that we need, but also just to defend the bare minimum. And so I think it's a yes and with the legislative approach, yes, we need to be more involved. I'm hearing that in order for us to advance things on that legislative front, but then also recognizing that a lot of the issues that young people care about are global. A lot of them are national. We're talking about immigration, and Unidos. I have to shout out Copal because my sister works there. If we're going to shout out Unido, I have to shout out Copal. And so those are, we have to continue to do that, but also with young people, and I say this because I'm in this group of all these, with Kavya and all these other young people, but realizing that the globe is in our neighborhood. And so yes, we want to be able to focus on just these one legislative levers, but when all of us have immigrant parents, or all of us have been scared, it's also understanding that our advocacy might even bubble up beyond just what the state legislator can hold. But again, I like to go on my little rambles. And so Kavya or Sam, do you have any other responses, or is there any legislative thing? Sam, I know you've been doing some local organizing up where you're at. If you want to speak to how you guys have been engaged with the local municipalities, or how you've been engaged on the local level. And maybe to advance to what you were saying, Ron, and as to how we're advancing our goals as individuals.
So as far as local level politics and political issues go, my focus kind of is pretty focused on Duluth. I mean, obviously, with getting young people active in the party, my scope there, of course, is statewide, across greater Minnesota. But in terms of actual individual issues, my focus is a lot more Duluth centric. Right now, there's a lot of energy around a ballot measure for right to repair, about right to repair specifically for rentals. So there's strong. There's a lot of just across Duluth, a lot of landlords who are just not doing their jobs and are, and just letting houses rot, literally, and letting repairs go undone for, years on end. And so there's a ballot measure that's going to be voted on this November 4th in Duluth that will let tenants basically take the power into their own hands, get the repair done, and knock that cost off their rent. That's one thing that I know a lot of young people in Duluth are really excited about, whether they're actively involved or even just like seeing it happen, seeing it play out. There's so much support for that. On a similar level, we just actually saw the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission announce its decision that, yeah, it's okay if BlackRock buys up Minnesota Power, which is like the main energy conglomerate providing electricity to Duluth. And so there's a lot of young people who are upset about that, because like that just, I mean, we've seen the pattern of BlackRock, buying up, as an investment firm, buying up a bunch of businesses and then just mothballing it, letting it, the term is enshittification, and letting things run into the ground and then just collecting the profits from that. So there's a lot of young people who are very upset about this decision by the Public Utilities Commission that, like, yeah, it's okay if BlackRock buys this, because that just does not match up with what we need, or what we're what's going to make the quality of life better in general. So these are issues where, if there had been more unity with older generations, I think it would have been a lot easier to get young people on board for these, for whichever groups would advocate for these things. But because we have to now take the power into our own hands, it's one of those things where it makes it harder to trust the other systems that are in place.
Sandy, you raised a very interesting question, and Kati, it kind of follows on our conversation when we had coffee, but this is for Sam. Which direction does it go? Does it go that MYDFL would like groups, be it the main DFL or advocates on the BlackRock Power, to reach out to you for your position and solicit your support? Or does it go the other direction, where you have an issue that you're concerned about, that you then want to be proactive, I think you used that word, and reach out and let your position be known? Which direction does it go?
I think it flows either direction. Just with, getting the conversation started is the most important thing.
Okay. Matt Little, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks, Ron. Well, first, thank you for taking your time this morning to come and speak to all of us. I just really appreciate your accessibility. You all have things you want to be doing, and I appreciate your time. So when I think about young folks in politics, it's hard not to. I used to be a young person in politics, and now I'm middle-aged in politics. But when I was in college, I'm a nerd, right? Like I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. I always loved politics. I could beat any one of you at Magic the Gathering if you so tried. And so I want that context in there. But when I was in college, I loved politics, but at the same time, I had a lot of other priorities, like what my friends and I are doing on Saturday night, and going out and just living life. Like, how am I going to get enough money to study abroad, all that kind of stuff. And so if we are all self-aware, and we know that we feel this is important, and we are nerds, my question to you is, how do we bring in people that don't care, right? That aren't involved, but have a lot of power, right? Because we are, the studies say we are losing young people. And I don't want to sound trite when I say this, which is like, how are we passing the coolness factor, right, in our politics and in the way we approach politics? Because there's a lot of people that are voting for who they identify with, not necessarily on policies right now, because not everybody formulates those at the beginning of their life. So I just wanted to throw it to you, like, how are we going to bring people back in that aren't involved and aren't hyper aware of politics. And thank you for your answers ahead of time.
Yeah, I can go
Kathy,
ahead and start us off for that question. It's a great question, and so I'm president of MYDFL, and I'm also president of College Democrats here at the U of M campus. So that question has been on my mind for quite a while, and I think the experience that I would draw to that to answer that would be when we look at the U here, we have seen tuition rise at a rapid rate. And obviously students are aware about it, but they don't make that connection that it's tied to the funding cuts or the Trump administration. So the big focus for things like that is, the country is getting more violent, things are getting more scary and unpredictable. But how do we let students or young people in general realize that it's directly tied to what's happening nationally? And I think once we establish that connection, it's a lot easier to get them to want to be involved.
And bouncing off of that, once you've drawn that connection of your material conditions are changing because of this other thing that's happening that looks like it's somewhere else. The next step that you have to include is, and we can fix that. We have to get involved. That's the simple version of the message, but ultimately it's going to be tailored to the individual person and the individual situation. But there's a lot of really good inroads to get young people energized about politics. I've seen it generally works really well when it's like you get them in on one issue, and then people start to realize, oh wait, the whole system is messed up. We got to change the whole system. But the balance to strike is making sure that they don't see, oh, the whole system is messed up, and they just throw their hands up and be like, well, I guess everything's going to be terrible forever. We have to be able to instill in people the hope and optimism that we can actually change things and make positive impacts on the world.
Kathy, you want to respond?
The only thing I'd add, and I don't know if it's cool, I think it's cool, be trauma informed. And I don't know, that doesn't sound cool, but when I say the globe is in your neighborhood, I mean it. And so people have grown up with all kinds of trauma, and the DFL and the Republican Party and many institutions have earned distrust from many of the communities. And so being able to acknowledge it and own it, I'm more likely to trust an individual than if they come up to me and they say, in the past we've messed up, but this is what we're going to do. I'm like, okay, you're with it, And so for me, like that speaks wonders, but that's all. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think you were next.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. So I've been doing rural outreach and recruitment for the last few months. So getting to go to places like Crookston and Brainerd and, talking to the young folks. Now, obviously, these are people who are already engaged because they're coming to their Senate district picnic and things like that. So they're already engaged, and we haven't touched on it, but this is one of the biggest things that I've heard from young people who want to run for office is, how do I do this and have a family? I want to have a family. I feel like my choice is either run for office and be elected or have a career and a family. I can't afford to pay my student loans doing this work. I don't want to live in my parents' basement forever, right? So, that goes back to the housing issue that came up earlier. And so really that operational piece, how do I do this and succeed, or and then the other piece that has come up more so since June is, and you touched on it, Kati, mental health. Is doing this work going to, because young people, let's be honest, their ACEs score is already pretty high. Right. Yeah. So how do I do this and keep my sanity and not come away deeply traumatized? So those are, and as a parent of 3 kids and someone who lost their job when they got reelected, this is my experience, but those are 2 things that I've heard a lot in the rural work I've been doing.
I was hoping you'd have the answer. for that one. I really was. I can only speak from my lived experiences, I think, about this, because there's no correct answer, I don't think, of how to navigate this. But realizing that the community, in the work that I do around maternal child health, I hear every day, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a family. It takes a community to keep them safe. And as a young, and to acknowledge that we're also kids, however old you are, we all deserve a village. We all deserve a community that will raise us, to keep us safe, and to provide us mentorship. And so I think that would be my only thing, is just to keep looking and finding, and knowing that you might have to build or start that village. And it might start with one person or two people that you really trust. But also acknowledging that you might not agree with these people. I think one thing that I can own as a young person, and I even told Ron this, is like, I used to think I had every correct answer, because I had a response to everything, and so part of it is, on a young person's side, acknowledging that there will not always be a binary agreement on everything. That everything is nuanced, trauma informed. Everybody is coming at things with their own ACE score, with their own lens. And so being able to kind of stand in the uncomfortable gap there with folks. And that addresses absolutely none of the economic concerns that, none of those things, but it's, that is like the best place I can encourage folks to get started, because that's where I've found my foundation.
Well, we're just about out of time, and Dennis has had his hand up for a little while, so let's make Dennis's question last, and then Kavya and Kati and Sam give you a chance to make some closing remarks. So Dennis, floor is yours.
Yeah, I was just a little curious, for amongst the perspective of the folks that you deal with within your organization, if they think that politics has gotten into too much of an us versus them attitude, versus possibly where they should work together, us with them. Again, there'll be differences, and all that needs to be sorted out, but it just seems like it's, to me, kind of gotten to be a, we're just doing this for the sake of our team winning, no matter what we have to do or how this will be. And I think that might affect, again, for young people having their interest, because they may not be interested in wanting doing an us versus them exercise, as opposed to, again, looking for solutions for housing and for tuition and healthcare and all that. So just from your perspective, if that's kind of what you guys pick up on. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start us off. I think for a lot of young people, so like for context, I'm going into my third year in college. Their entire lives, politics has been us versus them. They haven't known anything beyond that. And I think when you look at the impact of like social media on how we view our politics, it is very polarizing. And it's very easy to be polarized through social media. So I think you're exactly right, where it does feel like rather than coming together and being collaborative, it is like we're on separate teams and our team has to win. And I don't know what the answer is to combat that, but I think that is there.
And I think part of why politics feels so us versus them, especially for young people, is because increasingly the political decisions have not been about like, oh, how do we balance the budget? It's a lot more existential. It's a lot more who gets to have rights. And obviously young people in general, we've grown up, around a more diverse group of people, more ideas being normalized. And so when the far right, tries and ultimately many times succeeds to push the narrative back towards something that we had already moved past, that looks to us like a betrayal, and so that's part of why politics is becoming so much more divisive, more fraught for young people, especially. It's a lot more existential. It's more like this is really high stakes for us because, many of us are Black, brown, trans and non-binary, autistic like myself, and we would like to just be our normal selves and not have to conform to, what some, fascist wants us to do. This is really important stuff, and so to boil it down to just which team wins is no longer the dynamic and has never been the dynamic for us. As much as that has been the case in past generations, this is very serious for us, and that's part of why we are so up on making sure that our side, for lack of better words, wins, because it's either our side or the entire way of life is gone.
I see Arnie and Jane, you have your hand up real quick. I wasn't gonna call on anybody else, but real quick, do you have a comment or thought?
I do. And I think it's important to realize that over the last 70, 80 years, protest has changed things. I understand the young people not thinking that the No Kings is not going to make a big difference tomorrow or next weekend. But you can't just sit there and allow the immigrants to be decimated. And that's what this is about, is making it clear that that's unacceptable. And that's all I need to say.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jane. We can't sit there and do that. And as a child of an immigrant, as the cousin of an immigrant, as somebody who grew up in a mixed status household, we are not sitting on the sidelines. We are involved in those things directly. And by we, I mean me and the young people I'm around with. I'm only speaking on behalf of our lived experiences. And so it's where we're doing that work, I think is where we might be different, because so many of us who care, because we are of the population, we're not saving anybody. It's ourselves. We need to, it's our families. It's very personal. And so I appreciate people who stand up and they stand in the gap and they show up and they do those things. But I don't think that's where I will be the safest that weekend. And so when I say I'm not being part, it's not because I'm poo-pooing on it. I think it's still important. And I'm going to go back to my community where we're doing organizing work and where we're hosting trainings and things like that, and continue buckling down on that. I think the last reflection that I have, and I don't need to do any closing then, because I know I've been doing lots of chatting today, is I have a dear cousin of mine who is on the polar opposite side of the spectrum, if we were to look at things linearly. And when I see his social media posts, I sometimes don't know, I'm not looking to see who's posting what. And when I see his things and he's saying things like, there's too much money in politics. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And we're too involved in the Middle East. We're all over the globe. And I'm like, yeah, we are. We really are. Imperial capitalism is an issue, and he's talking about political violence. We need to tone down the rhetoric. And I go, yes, we do. And then it's all of those things, and we're on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. And so part of me's, and I don't have the answer, this is just my musing, but part of me's wondering, it's like, if we're all agreeing about all of these things, from two sides of the same coin, what is that last bridge? I don't know what that last bridge is. I don't know what it'll take to flip the coin, but I think that we're there, and I'm hoping it's, the brilliance of the young people who are here, not me. I'm talking about people coming after me who will be able to flip that coin, because I just feel like there's so much negativity coming in, and it's so similar, but it's like, what will it take? So just encouraging folks to think about, you're right. It's not us versus them. It's all of us trying to shift at, every institution that we're coming across. So thank you all.
Sam, you have any closing thoughts?
I don't know. As far as closing thoughts, just understands that I think it's really helpful to understand that young people come into this with a different lived experience than past generations have come into things. Our priorities are shaped by the lives that we've lived. Many of us, are too young to remember 9/11, increasingly. And, that is, I think, a really important lens to think about, or to consider when you're interacting with any young person. That we may not have the same context that you have, when getting involved with politics. So that does augment and shape how we engage with things.
And Kavya, you get the best position, which is last.
Awesome. All right. Well, mine will be brief because I feel like Sam and Kati really covered it. But I just wanted to say, once again, thank you for having us. And then if any of you know of anyone that's between 14 and 36 that would like to join, please direct them to our website. I put it in the chat. But thank you so much for having us.
And we're here for you. It's not like there are two sides of this. We're all in the same village. We all have how did you put it, Kati? The globe is in your living room?
The globe is in your neighborhood.
Globe is in your neighborhood. Yeah, well, we're all in that neighborhood. So it was a great conversation. Delighted to make contact with all of you. Kati, thanks so much for bringing your friends along. Let's have a big party where there are more of all of us, and where we get to find all those places where we agree. I had one guy respond on the No Kings thing. He was clearly a polar opposite from me politically, and he gave me a lot of the vitriol that comes from that side. But as I parsed his email, I found about 6 different areas where we could agree. Now, my question is, what do I do with that? So, but that's a topic for another day. We're done for this morning. It's a beautiful day. Enjoy the fall. Curtis, any comments from